Hey everybody, welcome back to MYP Unit Planners, Part 1 Inquiry, Establishing a Purpose for the Unit. Today we are going to focus on our inquiry questions section of our unit planner. So let's get started. Alright, so let's go ahead and pick up where we left off. Okay, when you get to your Canvas course here, we're in Unit Planning Part 1 Inquiry. And we want to pull up our unit from the OneDrive. I have been working with a Sciences unit planner from my days of teaching biology. So here's my practice one. Okay, and then we're going to scroll down. We're going to be using our inquiry question section. Okay, our goal is to have 3 factual, 3 conceptual, and 3 debatable questions for every unit. So here's my resource. So I'm going to have that open, ready for me to rock and roll. So I've got my inquiry questions resource and my unit planner ready to rock. Alright, so let's take a look at what inquiry questions are according to the IB. Okay, so we know that we've got essential questions that are super content related, maybe related to our learning target every day because we are an avid school. So we're pretty familiar with making questions. We are teachers after all. And in the IB, they differentiate between inquiry questions into 3 categories. We've got factual, we've got conceptual, and we've got debatable. So our factual questions, these are going to be like our level 1 knowledge, just fact-based. We can have some content terms in here. It's not against the rules anymore like it was for our statement of inquiry. They can be content related, they can be skills related. We want them to be supported by evidence. We can use them to explore terminology in the statement of inquiry, because that's going to be really important for our kids to be building these terminology across their curriculum and their interdisciplinary. So I want to make sure my students understand my key concept of change in biology, and then they can also look at change in things like math or social studies or wherever else they might see it. They're frequently topical and encourage recall and comprehension. So let's take a look at our resources here. Alright, so factual, we should have at least one of the unit's concepts and or the global context exploration. Recall and comprehension, just like before. We want these to lead to answers supported by evidence, explore the meaning of the concepts, context, or other terminology used in the statement of inquiry. Our factual inquiry questions might start with what? So let's make a few here. Okay, so what, if I look at my conceptual understanding and statement of inquiry, a few things that they might get stuck on. Form, function, environments, adaptation. Okay, so what is the relationship between form and function in organisms? Okay, so that might be a good place to start because that's going to be one of our big ideas in biology, is how is form related to function in organisms. Okay, and then I'm going to bold it, so I've got my words in here. Okay, what does it mean for organisms to adapt? Okay, adaptation. Okay, we know how we might adapt as humans, but what does that mean for organisms? That's a good question. Get us started here. Okay, and then let's have one that's related to change. Let's see, what do we notice when the environment changes over time? Happens maybe? Okay. So this time I've got my related concept of environment, and then I've also got my change, my key concept. So I'm going to put both of these guys in here. Alright, so now I've got 3. I'm ready to rock and roll. Alright, let's look at conceptual. Okay, conceptual, just like with our conceptual understanding, we want to be looking at the big ideas that connect facts and topics. Compare and contrast. I love compare and contrast questions. We want to explore contradictions, and we want to be looking at deeper disciplinary and interdisciplinary understanding. Okay, we want to look at familiar, unfamiliar, issues, ideas, and context, and encourage analysis and application. All right, so let's take a look at our resource here. Okay, so again, we want to have at least one of our red, blue, or green words. These might not lead to a particular answer. Analysis and application, transfer to familiar or less familiar situations, compare and contrast, and explore contradictions. So these guys might start with how or why. So let's take a look at ours and do some examples here. So, how is it different? I'm going to say, how do people and other organisms differ in how they relate to the environment? Okay, so obviously people, we kind of change the environment to fit us, but we are the only organisms that really do that. All other organisms are kind of stuck with whatever the environment shows them. So I think that's a really good question. Why does form determine function in organisms or in our bodies? Okay, so I think that this is a really good question because students oftentimes have a hard time understanding that, like, your skin is your skin for a reason, you know, your lungs are shaped that way for a reason. So if we can start having them think of that in terms of their large bodies, then we can also have them think about it in terms of small, microscopic things like DNA. All right, let's try to do one with change and our global context. One that is pretty good. I think this might be more debatable, but one debatable one that I'm thinking is, how long does evolution take? How long does adaptation and evolution take? So this one is a cool one, but I think it's more debatable. So I'm going to put that here. All right, so let's think about change and adaptations. Let's see, how much would an environment have to change for evolution to happen? Okay? Because there is kind of a right or wrong answer to this, but it's a part of the bigger concept here, so I think that this is a really good question. And we're going to want to make sure that everything is color-coded and beautiful. All right, so now we've got 3 factual, 3 conceptual. All right, debatable. These ones are difficult, but they're also super cool, and it really gets kids thinking about these things. So debatable questions, they can debate a position, they can discuss an idea. We're going to use this to explore significant ideas and issues from multiple perspectives. It can be contested, have tension, it can be a hot topic, maybe deliberately provocative, definitely, and encourages synthesis and evaluation. So let's take a look at our resource here. That right. Okay, so again, we're going to have our green, blue, and red words. We want it to be tied to the summative task in some respect, encourage synthesis and evaluation, and require students to take a position. So it might start with do, is, could, should, would, or to what extent. IB really loves that word, to what extent, because it gets kids to kind of be thinking about it. All right, so could, should, would, could, should, would, do, is, to what extent. Okay. I think that one really hot topic for this guy is, should evolution be taught in schools? Okay. This is a hot topic question for sure. Could humans evolve in the next 100 years to environmental change. Okay. So this is a good one. If you're thinking about what's the future for people, it's always good to relate it to people. Right. Should evolution be taught in schools? How long does adaptation and evolution take? Would organisms survive on a different planet? Okay. Ooh, but I don't have many of my words here. So let's say, would organisms with Earth forms and functions survive on a different planet? There we go. All right. Now, if you're struggling with these, I've got a few resources here. So I've got the big guide up at the top. I've got some checklists here. I've got some examples. I've got some examples from the arts, from design. And really, you guys have a bunch of examples as well in your concepts guide. So if I go back up here to my, Sciences Concepts Guide, I think I've got some more inquiry questions here too. Yes, okay. So on the page that has, nope, just kidding. We've got some example statement of inquiries, concepts, areas of study. I do not have any more examples, but work with your planning team. You guys totally got this, and I'll talk to you next time.